There is a specific kind of dread that sets in around mid-July in the American suburbs. It's the moment you step out of your car and the heat doesn't just hit you. It wraps around you like a heavy, wet blanket. You rush inside, and the first thing you hear isn't the greeting of your family. It's the desperate, mechanical whine of the air conditioning compressor. It is a sound that signifies a losing battle. Even with the thermostat set to 72, the upstairs bedrooms feel like an oven, and the electric meter on the side of your house is spinning so fast it looks like a blur. You are paying hundreds of dollars a month for the privilege of a machine that is barely keeping the heat at bay, and your electric meter is spinning like a top. But if you were to walk into an old order Amish farmhouse in the middle of a 95-degree heat wave in Holmes County, Ohio, the experience is jarringly different. There is no hum. There is no vibration. There is only a cool, moving breeze that feels as though it's being generated by a hidden industrial chiller. The air is crisp, the humidity is gone, and the temperature inside is often 15 to 20 degrees cooler than the blistering sun outside. Most people assume the Amish simply tough it out because of their faith. That is a myth. They aren't suffering. They are utilizing a passive cooling engine built into the very skin of their homes. It is a system so effective that if it were adopted by modern builders, the residential HVAC industry, a market projected to reach $30 billion by 2030, would see its profits evaporate overnight. This isn't a new invention. It's a 150-year-old architectural secret that was quietly pushed out of the mainstream building codes to make room for expensive, energy-hungry appliances. If you're starting to realize that the modern comfort you're paying for is actually a form of expensive dependency, you've found the right channel. Hit the subscribe button now, because what we're about to uncover is the first layer of a cooling system that works better the hotter the sun gets. You'll see why your own home was designed to trap heat, and how you can use these Amish roof secrets to reclaim your comfort without a utility bill. To understand the Amish cooling secret, we first have to look at the massive engineering failure that is the modern American roof. In standard construction, your roof is designed to be a hot lid. We use dark asphalt shingles because they are cheap to manufacture and easy to install. But asphalt is a massive thermal sponge. On a 90-degree day, a dark shingle roof can reach temperatures of 160 degrees Fahrenheit. This heat doesn't stay on the surface. It radiates downward into your attic, turning it into a massive heat reservoir that stays hot long after the sun goes down. Your air conditioner isn't just fighting the weather. It's fighting the 1,000-pound radiator sitting directly over your head. The Amish master builders, however, look at a roof not as a lid, but as a thermal shield. The first thing you will notice on a traditional Amish home built for cooling is the material: standing seam, light-colored metal. While the modern world moved to asphalt in the mid-20th century for speed, the Amish stayed with metal for a very specific scientific reason that was documented in a landmark 1980 study by the Florida Solar Energy Center. They found that a cool, metal roof reflects up to 85% of solar radiation, while asphalt absorbs up to 90%. But the color is only the surface. The real Amish secret is what lies underneath that metal. In a modern home, the shingles are nailed directly to a wooden deck, which is then backed by fiberglass insulation. There is no breath in the system. The heat transfer is direct and relentless. When an Amish crew builds a cooling-optimized roof, they utilize a technique called the batten gap. Instead of laying the metal flat against the wood, they install a series of horizontal and vertical wooden strips, creating a 1 to 2 inch air gap between the roof deck and the metal shield. This is a critical piece of physics called an integrated radiant barrier. Because there is a physical air gap, the heat from the sun cannot conduct into the house. It has to jump across the air, which is a terrible conductor of heat. More importantly, This gap is open at the bottom, the eaves, and open at the top, the ridge. This creates what the Amish call a sweat path. As the sun hits the metal, the air inside that 2-inch gap heats up and immediately begins to rise. Because the gap is open, that hot air escapes out the top and pulls cool air in from the bottom. The roof is literally inhaling cool air and exhaling the sun's heat before it ever touches the structure of the house. I remember talking to an Amish carpenter in Lancaster County who was replacing the roof on a 100-year-old barn. He told me that a roof that doesn't breathe is a roof that dies,
a roof that
and
dies,
a house that doesn't breathe. He wasn't talking about rot or mold. He was talking about the energy of the home. By creating this moving layer of air, the Amish are using the sun's own energy to power a cooling system. The hotter the sun shines, the faster that air moves through the gap, and the more heat is stripped away from the house. While the batten gap handles the radiation from the sun, there is a second, even more powerful secret hidden in the very peak of the Amish roof. It's a feature you've likely seen 1,000 times on old barns and farmhouses, usually dismissing it as a decorative cupola or a weather vane mount. In reality, that structure is the exhaust manifold of a whole house cooling engine that relies on a principle of physics discovered in the 1700s, but perfected by the Amish to keep their families comfortable in the humidity of the American Midwest. The cupola perched atop an Amish barn or farmhouse is often mistaken by passing tourists for a piece of decorative folk art, a charming wooden hat designed to hold a weather vane. But to a master builder in the Old Order, that structure is the critical exhaust lung of the entire home. To understand why it works, you have to understand the Bernoulli principle, a law of fluid dynamics formalized in 1738, which states that as the speed of a moving fluid, like air, increases, its pressure decreases. When a summer breeze hits the slatted sides of an Amish cupola, it creates a localized low-pressure zone. Inside the house, the hot, humid air is naturally buoyant. It wants to rise. In a standard modern home, that hot air hits a flat, insulated ceiling and stops, turning your upstairs bedrooms into a stagnant heat trap. But in an Amish home, there is a clear, unobstructed thermal path. They utilize central stairwells and hidden ceiling grates that act as internal chimneys, allowing the hottest air in the house to rise all the way into the peak of the roof. Because the cupola is sitting in that low-pressure breeze, it literally sucks the hot air out of the house. It is a massive, silent, gravity-powered vacuum. This is the stack effect in its purest form. While your neighbor is paying an electric company to run a 5-horsepower fan to force air through narrow plastic ducts, the Amish are using the geometry of the roof itself to create a constant, high-volume air exchange. But here is where the story takes a dark turn into the world of modern regulation. If you look at the history of American building codes, specifically the surge in weatherization standards that followed the 1973 oil crisis, you see a sudden and aggressive push toward sealed building envelopes. The logic was that by sealing a house airtight, you could save energy on heating. But the unintended consequence, one that the multi-billion-dollar HVAC industry was more than happy to solve, was that these sealed houses became thermal coffins in the summer. By removing the natural lungs, like cupolas and high-point vents, modern codes forced the heat to stay inside the structure. This made the purchase of a high-tonnage air conditioning unit not just a luxury, but a survival necessity. In many jurisdictions today, natural ventilation is no longer recognized as a primary cooling method. You are legally required to install mechanical fans that consume electricity, effectively outlawing the passive Amish system that has worked for centuries. We traded a free, physics-based lung for a noisy, expensive ventilator that requires a monthly subscription to the grid. However, the Amish secret doesn't stop at just moving air. The true genius of their July cooling strategy lies in a phenomenon known to physicists as night sky radiation. If you've ever walked past a brick building late at night after a hot day, you can feel the heat pushing off the walls. That is stored thermal energy. Modern homes, built with thin siding and fiberglass, have almost no way to shed this heat once it's inside. But the Amish utilize the radiative window of the night sky. In the late evening, when the sun goes down, the Amish perform a specific thermal purge. They open the lowest windows on the shaded north side of the house and fully open the vents in the cupola. Because the deep space of the night sky is essentially a heat sink and near absolute zero, the light-colored metal roof we discussed in Part 1 begins to radiate its heat upward into the void of space at an incredible rate. This causes the air inside the batten gap to cool rapidly, becoming denser and sinking. As it sinks, it creates a secondary siphoning effect that pulls the lingering daytime heat out of the interior walls and floors. By 3 a.m., the massive stone foundations and heavy timber frames of the house have been pre-chilled to the nighttime low, often in the 60s. When the sun rises the next morning, the Amish lock the vault. They close the heavy, insulated shutters and seal the high vents. The house is now a 40,000-pound block of cool thermal mass. While the exterior temperature climbs to 95 degrees, the interior remains in a state of thermal lag, staying cool for 10 to 12 hours based solely on the cold stored from the night before. This isn't a theory. It's a calculated daily cycle. A 2012 study by the University of Pennsylvania's School of Design looked at traditional mass and vent structures and found they could maintain a comfort zone between 68 and 75 degrees, even when peak exterior temperatures hit 100 degrees, provided the night sky purge was handled correctly. But there is one final piece to this cooling puzzle, a secret, hidden not on the roof, but in the very soil surrounding the house. It's a technique used by the oldest settlements in Lancaster County that acts as a natural geothermal boost to the entire roof system, and it is something almost no modern architect even knows exists. The final piece of this cooling masterpiece isn't found in the rafters, but buried 6 feet beneath the garden soil. If you follow the air path of an old order farmhouse to its origin, you will often find a series of stone-lined or clay-tiled earth tubes that act as a natural geothermal pre-cooler. While your modern air conditioner uses a high-pressure chemical refrigerant like our 410A, a substance that is being phased out by the EPA due to its massive global warming potential, the Amish use the thermal constancy of the earth itself. At a depth of 6 to 8 feet, the temperature of the soil stays at a nearly constant 55 degrees Fahrenheit year-round, regardless of whether there is a blizzard or a heatwave on the surface. The Amish earth tube intake pulls fresh, humid exterior air through these buried channels before it ever enters the house. As the air travels through the cool earth, it undergoes a dual transformation. First, it loses its sensible heat to the surrounding soil, dropping from 95 degrees to a crisp 60 degrees. Second, as the air cools, it hits its dew point, causing excess humidity to condense against the walls of the tube and drain away. By the time this air is sucked into the house by the vacuum of the cupola we discussed, it isn't just air, it is naturally conditioned air. It is dehumidified, chilled, and completely free of charge. This is the geothermal boost that allows an Amish family to keep their indoor environment at a stable 70 degrees while their neighbors are suffering through brownouts, because the local electric grid is overloaded by thousands of struggling AC compressors. But there is a reason you've never seen a developer offer earth tube cooling on a new suburban build. It's because a geothermal earth tube system has a maintenance cycle of essentially zero. Once the pipes are in the ground, they work for a century. There are no filters to buy, no compressors to fail, and no seasonal tune-ups required from a local HVAC contractor. In a consumer-driven economy, a system that never breaks is a system that isn't worth building. To round out this biological engine, the Amish employ what I call the transpiration shield. If you look at the landscaping of a traditional homestead, you'll notice a very specific placement of deciduous trees, like oaks and maples, on the south and west sides of the structure. This is more than just shade. A single large tree can release up to 40,000 gallons of water into the atmosphere every year through a process called transpiration. This is nature's own evaporative cooling. On a hot July afternoon, the air passing through a thick canopy of leaves isn't just shaded. It is physically cooled by the energy-absorbing process of water turning into vapor. A 1990 study by the U.S. Department of Agriculture found that the cooling effect of a single healthy tree is equivalent to 10 room-sized air conditioners running 20 hours a day. The Amish don't just build a house. They plant a microclimate. They utilize a three-dimensional shield of metal, air gaps, stone mass, and biology to create a sanctuary of coolness that the modern world has forgotten how to build. We have been led to believe that comfort is something you purchase in a box and mount to your window. We have been convinced that if we don't have a monthly bill to a utility provider, we are somehow living in the dark ages. But as you look at your next electric bill, I want you to ask yourself, who is truly living in the dark? Is it the family in Holmes County who understands the laws of physics and the rhythms of the earth? Or is it the family in the suburbs who is one power outage away from a heat stroke and one paycheck away from a disconnected service? The Amish roof secret isn't a secret because it's a miracle. It's a secret because it is a threat. It proves that with $0 in monthly energy costs, you can live better, cooler, and more independently than 90% of the modern world. The blueprints are right there in the historical record, buried under layers of building codes designed to protect corporate profits. I want to know which of these layers shocked you the most. Was it the batten gap under the metal, the vacuum power of the cupola, or the underground earth tubes? Drop a comment below, because your engagement is the only way this hidden history bypasses the algorithm and reaches people who are tired of being energy hostages. And you'll want to be here for our next deep dive. We are uncovering the 100-year-old Amish water secret, a gravity-powered pump that moves thousands of gallons of water uphill without a single watt of electricity or a drop of gasoline. The local water authorities don't want you to know it exists, but I'm going to show you exactly how to build it. Subscribe to Amish Secrets, and let's start taking our independence back, one blueprint at a time. Stay cool, and I'll see you in the next one.